خير. أود في البداية أن أرحب بالأستاذة الدكتورة عدلى رجب، أستاذ الاقتصاد بكلية الاقتصاد والعلوم السياسية جامعة القاهرة، ومدير مركز البحوث والدراسات الاقتصادية والمالية بكلية الاقتصاد جامعة القاهرة، بالإضافة للعديد من المناصب والكثيرة التي لا يتسع المجال لذكرها كلها، ولكن كلها بيعكس خبرة كبيرة في مجال السياحة والنقل الجوي. حضرتك من أوائل الناس اللي اشتغلتي، وأنا أشهد على ذلك من زمان في المجال ده. كما يعني أعبر عن سعادتي الشديدة في أن احنا بنبدأ أولى حلقات أو سلسلة الويبينارز التي تعقدها وتستضيفها كلية الاقتصاد والسياسة SOEP بجامعة الجيزة الجديدة بحياتك، باعتبارك أستاذتي وزميلتي العزيزة اللي بفتخر دايما بأن أنا اشتغلت معاها. عنوان الويبينار هيبقى Future Job Opportunities in the Services Sector, the Tourism Case or the Egyptian Tourism. قبل ما يعني حضرتك تأدي لحضرتك الكلمة، هعمل كده حاجه تو ريفرش او بس بعض العبارات البسيطه المقدمه علشان كمان الطلبه وكل المستمعين يبقوا عارفين ليه اخترنا الموضوع ده بالذات. Tourism, like other sectors, is facing too many challenges, recent in addition to the original or traditional ones we already know. I could really categorize them into: number one, the pandemic has, with all its health, safety challenges and implications, which has changed everything, starting from the access through the airports, through the air flights, to the accommodation, the lodging, to the job opportunities and the style of tourism itself. The second one is the technology, the technological changes, which has actually creates many opportunities and at the same time creates or puts many threats on us. It depends on how are we going to look at the technology. Is it an opportunity or is it a challenge? And how are we able to succeed in utilizing and dealing with it? My question is, where does the youth stand in this or among all those two threats? Considering it from an opportunity or a labor market, which is our seminar here today, and at the same time as consumers or travelers, because we all know that the youth represent a big or the bulk of the consumers or the travelers in this. So I'm gonna stop here just to raise the appetite of everybody. I wanted to give this small or short intro. Okay. Dr. Adla, حضرتك اتفضلي. You have all يعني for floor for half an hour, and then we will discuss and open to the floor and to the students and our colleagues here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hala. It's an أولاً بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وكل سنة وحضراتكم طيبين. شهر رمضان بيهل علينا وأعياد الإخوة المسيحيين كمان بتهل علينا، فالحقيقة شهر أبريل ومايو مليان إن شاء الله دايماً بالأعياد وبالمناسبات الطيبة، و25 أبريل تحرير سيناء. الحقيقة مليان أحداث جميلة، واعتقد ان هو ده ربيعنا المصري اللي هو كله اعياد ان شاء الله. في البدايه الحقيقه احب ان انا اتوجه بالشكر لجامعه نيو جيزه على مبادرتها في عمل مثل هذا الويبينار او سلسله الانشطه اللي هتبقى مرتبطه بفكره العمل أو الفرص المستقبلية في المجالات المتعددة. وأنا الحقيقة سعيدة طبعاً إن ما أقدرش أقول تلمستي، لأن أنتي بقيتي أستاذة كبيرة دكتورة هالة صقر، عميدة الكلية الحقيقة كلية الاقتصاد والسياسة، فأحييكي وأحييكي على هذه المبادرة وعلى إن إحنا بدأنا بالسياحة. واشكر طبعا مش بس دكتوره هالة صقر عميده الكليه، ولكن كل مساعديها والستاف اعضاء هيئه التدريس والطلبه اللي اتمنى انهم يستمتعوا بالفكر اللي في هذه المحاضره. Switch into English because the presentation is done in English, and I think choosing the topic of tourism, which now it is a hot topic, especially after we have witnessed the last 2 days the big and the immense and the huge, tremendous parade of golden mummies, and when they were moved from the Cairo Tahrir Museum to the new or the dynamic, which is the new museum for Egyptian civilization. I think this is a great step toward the perception of Egypt and tourism in Egypt. Dr. Hala have mentioned at the beginning the idea of the future jobs, the challenge of the pandemic, the COVID-19 and its impact on tourism and how it has changed not only the way tourism is. It's not anymore business as usual. It's new norms of business, new norms of everything, starting from the social distancing, from taking into account the health and the safety requirements and many things. It has an impact not only on the traveler himself, but also on the workers and how do they deal with this pandemic. On the other hand, we have the technological changes, the technology and how it will impact. Me as an optimistic person, I see always the good side of these challenges. They are challenges and we have to admit, but on the same time, we have to benefit from these challenges and pick the opportunities that these challenges could we face. Let me start my presentation. I believe you see it now. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, quite well. Yes,
okay.
We hear it and we can see it well.
Sorry, and this is one of the challenges of the new technology. Okay, when I'm ready, whenever you want me to start.
Can start, Dr. Adla,
okay.
can start.
Okay, so the title of this presentation would be Future Job Opportunities in the Service Sector, and we have chose one of the main sectors, and the motive of this sector is tourism. Again, I thank New Giza University and Dr. Hala Sa'ar and Faculty of Economics and Political Science to give me this opportunity. I'm going to discuss with you today some points. The future job opportunities, why we have chosen tourism, the impact of the pandemic COVID-19 on tourism, what would be the roadmap towards sustainable and inclusive tourism in Egypt, and finally, how can youth be ready in tourism sector, especially that we are tackling the issue and we are talking with the not tourism and hospitality graduate students, but we are talking with economists and political scientists and researchers. So if we look for a quote that mentioned that technology continues to advance and we are experiencing an immense shift in the way we work, humans need to prepare for the workplace of the future today or now. This was said by Mr. James Wilson, the vice president of a tech company, Cornerstone. Why? Because he has seen that digital advancement over the last couple of decades has completely modified the way we work, where new industries were created, and these industries create millions of new roles. For the first time since one decade, we hear always talking about the social media managers, the influencers, the bloggers, the designers, the coders, new professions and new roles that we didn't hear about it in the last maybe 40 or 60 years. Some jobs were and now are still in high demand and will probably continue to have great opportunities over the next few decades. Why? Because they help other new jobs like the economists, the statisticians, the mathematicians, and also, which is very important, the healthcare aides. Other kinds of workers are on the leading edge of technology and cultural change that will have new opportunities in the future jobs. Peoples are getting over stereotypical professions. We hear about engineers, doctors, But now we are not neglecting these professions, but we are interested in creating new jobs of these stereotypical professions. Does this mean that there will be abundance of demand of these jobs? Of course not. But we have to prepare ourselves and the workforce for the fourth industrial revolutions due to many drivers of change, as have been mentioned in the World Economic Forum in 2016, the demographic changes, the socio-economic changes, and the technological changes, which could be the longevity or the aging society, the youth in emerging markets, and the women's empowerment. On the socio-economic part, the nature of work, which would be more flexible, the rapid urbanization, and the climate change and its impact on natural resources. And on the technological aspect, we would find that Internet of Things, the artificial intelligence, we are talking about the sharing economy, the circular economy, and the robotic transport. This also means that all these jobs need what? They need new skills, the resource management skills, the system and technical skills, and also the social skills. Therefore, we can say that future jobs in tourism are very related with the likes. This thumb that everybody uses maybe more than anything in his life now, either the like up or the dislike down. In the social media marketing, it would be an important to enhance our skills, the smart technologies, the idea of sustainability and ancillary revenue that could be created from these jobs. Raised. Why tourism? The power of tourism and its cross-sectorial nature is a global force for economic growth, development, and also employment. If we see that 1.5 billion of people had made travels in 2019, I will drop the 2020 because it is totally different, but till 2019, 1.5 billion people were traveling. They have created $1.7 trillion revenues or receipts. This had made an economic growth about 4%, which had continued for 10 consecutive years. And this is totally different than any other sector. If we could find that each 10 people working, one of them is working in tourism. This has also created a global exports of 7% and about third of the service export. We would find that tourism is the world's third largest export after chemicals, fuels, and it comes before even the automotive products and food, which means that it's a very important sector. In our region in the Middle East, sorry, the share of tourism in overall export of goods and services in 2019 was ranged between 18 and 58%, which means more than half of the service exports. Growth tourism had increased to reach 7% compared to only 1% of growth in goods export. The tourism sector is very reliable and matching with the Sustainable Development Goals. Despite that, the UNWTO, which is the International Organization for Tourism, had mentioned that tourism is fulfilling 7 to 8 objectives or goals from the sustainable SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. I can see that each one is fulfilling or would be fulfilled by the tourism. We can achieve the no poverty if everybody is working. We can achieve zero hunger if everybody is working in tourism and creating jobs. Now with the pandemic, the good health and well-being is becoming an essential part of tourism. It would be one of the priority of the tourism. We cannot provide a good service without a good quality of education. We cannot provide a good service without empowering women and the gender equality. And We can pass by all the other development goals, the 17 one, but we can stop at the peace and justice, because going around, having leisure in some destination or cultural in other destination, insist and confirm the idea of peace and justice among people and populations. But unfortunately, 2020 have seen the worst tourism long-term crisis. The COVID-19 has impacted travel and tourism unlike other events before in history. Borders were shut down, airplanes on the ground, hotel closed, travel restriction all over the world. This is the worst tourism long-term crisis, and it lasts for 1 year till now, maybe more, and expecting that it will continue at least till the end of this year, when the vaccination would be already spread all over the world. This had a very bad impact on the global economy, which had been contracted more than 5% in 2020. The global trade had fallen till 32%, and 100 to 120 million tourism jobs had been at risk, especially with the uncertainty in the. Would find that IMF had projected a direct impact on tourism trade balances, which had ranged from -6% of growth of GDP till 2%. And it would depend critically and strongly on the tourism recovery, which is still, as I mentioned, very uncertain. UNWTO scenarios had implied 2 scenarios, but all of them insist that the tourism receipts would decline 73% below the levels of 2019. In the Middle East, a large net of tourism exporters, which was Egypt, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and Tunisia, confronted losses and exceeding 2% of the GDP. This loss. Roadmap towards a more sustainable and inclusive tourism in Egypt, and how we would link this with the idea of job opportunities in the future. We would find 5 priorities. First of all, to mitigate the socio-economic impacts on livelihoods, particularly the women's employment and economic security. This would be the first key priority. To boost competitiveness and to build resilience, including economic diversification and encouragement of MSMEs, because it is very important that the micro, small and medium enterprise in tourism could raise new jobs. The advance in innovation and digital transformation in tourism, this could be an opportunity for creating new jobs, but on the same time, it could be a threat for some of the remaining jobs. But because, for example, for innovation, it's nice that we have robots in hotels, and this, of course, would have a negative impact on the workers. But on the same time, when you want to enjoy or to the destination, or to enjoy the leisure in a place, you want to see people, you want to have the smile, which could be one of the attracting part of the destination. Foster sustainability and green growth, and this is very, very typical for the health requirements that now, and the safety requirements, the safety measurement, this is to be taken into consideration to avoid any contagious from COVID. And finally, to enhance the focus on coordination among all the responsible leadership. The sustainable and inclusive tourism in Egypt, we would find that for the tourism sector employment, some keys were confirmed that 4 million workers are having a job in tourism, and this job would be threat if there is no tourism, where 1.8, which is almost 500,000 direct workers, most of them are in the age of 17 to 38 years old, which means that tourism is fulfilling the youth requirement for working. Secondly, we would find that not less than 16%, which means that almost a fifth of the workers in tourism are women, which is very important. Why? Not only for the women empowerment economically, but also because they are raising new generations and they can give a new thought for this generation. Most of them are working in accommodation, cultural and travel industries. Women are well educated, but not most of them entering in the tourism workforce. So we need to increase the level of women empowerment in tourism. The public sector is still leading the way of women in leadership roles, but we need more in tourism sector. In tourism sector, we would find that if we look at the economic value chain of the tourism sector, it will be related to 12 industries. I know that many of thoughts is saying that there is a relation between or the tourism sector is related to 70, and this is a code that everybody's saying, 70 industry. Yes, it's not 70 industries related, it's the forward and backward linkages to the tourism sector. However, the value chain is related to a 12 industry. Each industry has a sub-industries related to this industry. These industries are the recreational and services, the accommodation, the food and services, the dwellings, which are the houses that we can rent, and we will see how new startups had create new opportunities in these dwellings, the trade, the construction, the investment in new hotels or new touristic villages or new restaurants, the financial services and insurance, and the insurance is becoming very, very important now, especially after the COVID, the air transport, the traveling, the communication, how we can promote or we can communicate with each other, the utilities, electricity and water, the food selected sectors, the motor vehicles, and the beverage and tobacco products. These 12 industries, which are consisting the economic value chain, would be related to the innovation and digitalization to provide solution and to provide the service, had to be covered by health and safety guidelines and standards, to be attracted as destination to receive safe travelers or safe travel. New business models should be involved here, especially for the SDGs and the green, the low carbon growth investment and so on. Models of works or jobs in tourism sector would be, which is now already there, the digitalization of the startups, the new players who had been entered in the field. For example, we had found that from 2016 till 2025, digitalization in aviation, travel and tourism is expected to create up more than $300 billion of value for the industry. We would see that, for example, the best funded startups was the Airbnb, who everybody knows about it. It is more than $3 billion in the United States only for accommodation. We would find also other startups like Traveloka or Klook, which in many countries can create a fund for others to imitate or to give the same idea. To conclude, we would find that in Egypt, we have next norms. Next norms need higher priority initiative. These initiatives should be supported by the government, which already has an idea and going in the same path, or also to invite newcomers, either startups or the traditional sector, the private sector, which is leading the tourism sector in Egypt. We would find that new segment of tourists, like families, like Dr. Hala mentioned at the beginning, that there are new trend of travelers, the generation Y, the millennial, the youth. They are now the expecting travelers, the Chinese, their way of and their needs of providing the service. We have to deal with them with non-traditional communication, either by Instagram, YouTube, social media, all the social media, Facebook. We have to have new channels. We have also to release the connectivity and increase also the connectivity. Connectivity means that the way to arrive to the country, to the destination, and the accessibility, the easing the visa, or the visa facilitation like the e-visa. This is also innovation and technology. On the other hand, we have the tourism productivity. Domestic consumption should increase, and this would have an impact on the inbound demand, which would expand. We shall revisit all the service trade barriers to boost investment, which need relaxing the licensing and promoting more the SDGs. Innovation, technology, sustainability, and governance would be the umbrella of the smarter tourism development. To conclude, we would find that technology will dominate in 10 new jobs in the future that will have that should be big and should be created in the next decade in tourism sector. OTA, which is the online travel agent, new age of cabin crew, smart technology developer, revenue manager. Everything will be, we have heard that the NEMEC, or the new museum for Egyptian civilization, has only e-tickets. That means that you have to buy your ticket online before coming. This decrease the contact with the physical contact with other and prevent any contagion of the COVID. Also, travel insurance salesperson would be in need. In the influencer marketeer, the sustainability consultant, the Airbnb hosting and similar, and to be ready to new market outbound expert. All these new jobs would need a good and well-educated, informed economist, statistician, accountant, political expert or scientist, marketeer, media researcher, and public information officer. Thank you very much, and I wish I didn't give too much information to confuse anyone. Thank you very much. I'm ready for any question.
Thank you, Dr. Adla, for this. Thank you, Dr. Adla, for this very interesting presentation, and actually has answered a lot of questions and at the same time raised others. So I'll take this opportunity I have just two questions. The first one is, you mentioned that the number of employment in the Egyptian tourism is around 4 million. Okay, and as I understood, this includes the direct and indirect employed people. If I could stress on this, I think if we consider them 4 million and then we multiply by 4 or 5, so this means that the tourism sector is responsible about 20 million Egyptian, including the family itself and the kids and so on. I think that this issue should be raised on the political level and should be raised because nobody knows the importance of the tourism unless he is part of it or he is studying and caring about it. So I think if we consider a sector that is responsible about or carrying reliable about 20 million people, this should gain more, it could gain more importance. And if we add the women, because you mentioned also in the presentation that it does not exceed 60% as women participation. So I think we have a cultural maybe a role here, or a message that we have to deliver, that given the technological changes, women can play a bigger part, even if they do not want to be attend physically. They can work part-time, they can work through the technology, the BNP, and so on. So correct me if I'm wrong in this. This is the first point. The second one, what about the role of the ecotourism and the green tourism in Egypt? Is this an area that we could interfere strongly, given our sun and the beaches and the weather and so on, as you mentioned? Okay, would you prefer to answer them before we open the floor?
Yes,
yes.
Okay. Yes. I agree very much of the importance of tourism, and I believe that the last the crisis that we are still living of the pandemic had focused a lot on tourism all over the world, and especially in countries, as I mentioned, who are depending in their revenues and in their balance of payment on tourism, like Egypt. I'm glad that you have raised these two questions. And concerning the women, the 16%, I believe, Dr. Hela, that after some questionnaire that have been done by the government on the importance of tourism and the participation of women in tourism, it's not a cultural issue. The problem is that most of the destination, which is considered about more than 70% of the accommodation establishments in Egypt, are in remote areas, which is away from the home resident of these women. The problem that it's not that they are not going to leave their family or their houses or their home, but the problem is the decent work. They have to have a decent accommodation in the place. For example, when men work in a hotel in Hurghada or Sharm el-Sheikh, and their resident is the number of rooms is not big, and 8 men can share one room and 16 men can share one toilet. It's not the same with ladies or women or girls even. They won't accept to have more than 3 or 4 persons by room, and they have to have their own toilet or bathroom. So this is the idea. This is the idea that we have to give more importance to the decent work. The decent work means that people are working in a place where they feel comfortable. So it's not maybe cultural for the families of these ladies or girls, but cultural for the owner of the hotels and the private sector, that they should give more emphasis on this area. This is for the first question. For the green tourism, I believe also that the government is very keen of the green tourism. And this is why they have put some regulations that no new investments are to be provided without having at least 25 of the utilities are adopting green energy or intelligence light, just to decrease the impact of the low carbon emissions, or to decrease the impact of the climate change. So ecotourism and green tourism now is raised because of the pandemic. We can really use or get benefit from our sun, our lovely sun, which is full of vitamin D, and to promote our destination. Thank you.
We can move now to Dr. Shadwa, the moderator, because there are some questions on the.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Adla, for the great presentations. Now we will open the floor for questions. Okay. So we have a question here. So please go ahead, Dr. Mani. She will speak in the mic. Can you please talk?
I can't hear you.
Yes, I can hear you well, yeah, doctor.
Okay, but I can't hear the question. I can hear the speaker.
Hello, Dr. Adla, can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Adla, for the comprehensive and enlightening presentation. I actually have 2 questions. The first one is concerning the digital updates in the sector of tourism. Definitely we need to integrate the policymakers need to integrate the digital updates and integrate it in the policy for promoting tourism as an engine sector as engine of growth. But do you think that those updates can very well reach the extent of perhaps having one day something like a policy for digital tourism? By that I mean that, for example, some of the tourists, given the pandemic situation that we are in, that perhaps one day some of the tourists might be able to have a virtual tour in Egypt from the comfort of their homes. There are so many digital solutions and updates. Do you think that this would be possible, and whether this would be beneficial for promoting the tourism sector and also creating new jobs? This is the first question. The second one is regarding the internal tourism. I know that we are concentrating on the external tourists because we are talking about exports as a part in the GDP, but also we cannot neglect the internal tourism. And recently the government has shed a light on, has made some initiatives to promote the internal tourism, which can also aid and support the sector. So do you think that perhaps there should be more emphasis on the internal tourism, and that there are some more supportive policies to help promoting this part? Those are the two questions, and thank you again, Dr. Adla.
Thank you. Do you want me to answer the question, or do you take the question? Dr. Shadwa, as a moderator, do you want me to take all the questions, not to, or questions by question? What do you think?
Whatever you prefer, doctor.
For me, it's.
I think a question by question would be great.
Great. Okay. I will answer the first question Dr. May raised, which is the digital update and how the policymaker can use of it. Actually, I'm not working, to tell you the truth, I'm not working at the government, but I have to salute and to say thank you to the government, because they have started this since the pandemic. The digital update, the idea of virtual tour, it is already there. There are many, the Egyptian Tourism Authority, which one of the arms of Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, had created a YouTube channel where, and also a Facebook page where you can have all the museums, all the destination in Old Cairo, in other destination in the Upper Egypt, at the coastal areas. There is a virtual tour, and this is very important. Why? Because this create for the people who are looking at this virtual to have the intention to do the travel when it is available, either financially available or logistically available. So it is already there, but it has to be more promoted, and this could be either the work of the SMEs or the work of the private sector to enhance this virtual tour. On this other side, it's not only virtual tour, you have also virtual place to buy goods, Egyptian goods, replicas. You can have Nefertiti head, which is located in Berlin Museum. You can buy it, the replica, as the original one. You can buy it also online, and you receive it, not virtual of course, but you receive the same good. This is for the first question. For the second question, which is very important, the idea of domestic tourism, because internal, it's the domestic with the foreigner, which is the outbound, so the inbound. So for the domestic, really, to tell you the truth, at the beginning, maybe at the last decade, we were thinking that domestic tourism in Egypt is not that big. It's not more than 19%, comparing to countries like USA or China or the Canadian where the domestic tourism is about 50 to 70% of the whole receipt or revenues from tourism sector. The problem is the domestic tourism is depending on what? On the income, the level of income. And because the level of income in Egypt is not that big, we have found from the household survey that the percentage of leisure or tourism not exceeding 2% from the level of income. So if you have about £4,000 as monthly income, imagine the 2% devoted for tourism is too low. However, after the pandemic, because this is the only way, and even the UNWTO has mentioned that the only way for regenerating or reviving jobs in restaurants, in hotels, because everything is closed, the airports are shut and there is travel restrictions. So you have to depend on the local or the national or the domestic tourism. What did the government do? They did a very good job, what we call it, a promotion of Shatif Masr. They have made for the first time a very good coordination with other ministry. They have made a combined trip with Ministry of Aviation. They have give 50% of discount for the ticket airplane flights. They have in any destination, touristic destination. Most of the museums, not most, all the museums, the temples had decreased the tickets by 50%. So this is good, but it has to be extended even during summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We have another question from Dr. Ragab Musa. She will be coming here, so please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Adla. Thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to hear you, and I will my questions are based on the goal 16 from the SDGs: strong institutions, justice, and peace. So regardless of the justice, I want to emphasize peace and strong institution, and those two aspects will influence my questions. The first one is on strong institutions. What is the kind of coordination between the various institutions in Egypt that work in the tourism sector? Like, for example, the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the Tourism Authority, we have the Ministry of Culture. I think the coordination between them, policy coordination, might be important for boosting tourism sector in Egypt, and also preventing the overlap and red tape. The second question is regarding the estimates of the revenues for this sector. We are actually living in a very turmoiled region. We have a lot of conflicts, we have a lot of battles, and I want to be a little bit realistic that we will, I'm not optimistic like your kind self, that we might receive more good tourism like in 2010, 14 million, as far as I remember. But we might as well be a little bit realistic and put certain estimates within those risks that I have mentioned. What are the estimates for the revenues of the tourism sector, and how we are going to overcome certain revolts from the workers that are working on those sectors, and many sectors that are related with. And as Dr. Hala has mentioned, the many families, or the 20 million, maybe more, of those who are affected by this drawback. And also how we are going to confront the demands of the private sector, because the private sector has many issues concerning taxes, tariffs, and also licenses, as you have mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gheda. I believe you are a political science department, in the political science department, Dr. Gheda, yes?
Yes, yes, she is in the political science department. It's very
the
clear.
way
Yes.
of raising the question.
Yeah.
Okay, let me speak about, first of all, the goal 16, which is justice, peace, and strong institution. You have mentioned without the justice. No, the justice is to have the opportunity, equal opportunity, and all the travelers, the inbound travelers, or the national population could have the same opportunity. This is the justice in tourism. We can have all. So I can go to the museum, you can go to the museum, and the foreigners can go to the museum. There is no distinction. There is a justice of and equal opportunity to enjoy the sun, sea, and sand. This is for the justice. And for the peace, just if we deny or we put aside the harassment that really the national plus the foreigners could have in some touristic place, and we could really face this issue, which is not only affecting tourism, but affecting the ethics, the harassment that maybe people, just the way they look to the foreigners or to the tourists. If we can avoid this, we will have really a peaceful message for tourists in Egypt. Concerning the strong institution, I would tell you that the structural reform that had been done in Ministry of Tourism Antiquities, and I'm not defending the government, but this is what is happening now, really. And this coordination with Ministry of Civil Aviation, with Ministry of Culture, with Ministry of Health, with Ministry of Transport, we see this, and it was really seen with the Golden Parade. This good coordination and strong coordination with this structural reform that has been happened really would give a path and would give a place. You shouldn't be very optimistic, like me. I'm very optimistic, but also you shouldn't be pessimistic. Why? Because good things are happening, and from the crisis we can learn. And the best lesson that we have learned from the pandemic is how to coordinate and to ease work. To ease work means to relax licensing, to review and to revise the taxes, as you have mentioned. And in this particular part, I would tell you that during the crisis, the whole last year, there was the stimulus package that the government made it for the private sector, and this is for the first time that they give a relaxation and a release from paying all the utilities for more than 6 months, and it is extended. Each time it finished, it extended. This is for the first questions. For the second questions, concerning the estimates of revenue, just to correct a little bit some figures, in 2010 we have achieved 15 million tourists who had created about $12.5 billion. And in 2019 we have reached to 12 million tourists, which means less, but they created $13.5 billion. So it's not the quantity more than the quality and the average expenditure, which had increased. This is good. Of course, there is a great challenges facing the way of tourists. Why? Because Egypt is depending on mass tourism. Mass tourism and the tourists are dramatically changed. Why? The mass tourist, which is depending on a level of a middle class, now this middle class is suffering in the source market of tourism. This is one point. The second point, which is also very important, and we have to take care of it, the idea of the tour operator who had collapsed and had was exit from the market. And this would need a change of a way of marketing, targeting new individual, and ease the way of this individual to arrive to Egypt and to enjoy the tourism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adla. We have another question from Dr. Ola.
Dr. Adla, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm very happy to share in this webinar. And I have one question about green tourism. As I know, the central bank until now didn't formulate a comprehensive strategy about risk assessment in case of green finance. So my question, what about the role of tourism institution in Egypt? Will authority and the Ministry of Tourism will share with the central bank to formulate this strategy, and how it will affect especially the startup project if they think to start a project in this area or green tourism? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ola, and very happy to see you after a long time. And concerning the green tourism, as I mentioned in my presentation, or maybe when Dr. Hala raised the question, the green tourism here, we would find that the development authority, tourism development authority, which is the second arm of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, and it is involved on giving the license for a new investment. Now they have in Vision 2030 for the tourism sector, for their strategy, they have put a regulation of that all the utilities used not to be less than 25% for using green or using friendly, eco-friendly utilities. This is the first. Secondly, I'm not sure, Dr. Ola, if there is a certain cooperation between the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquity and the central bank, but I know that the central bank and the authority of هيئة الرقابة المالية, the authority of finance, I can't remember.
Control.
Yes.
Authority.
Okay. They have mentioned that they are promoting what they call it the green bonds. The green bonds, it's a way of giving credit to the investors to use it with a very low interest rate, and it is supported by the central bank, and it will be devoted for green projects. And one of the main area, of course, it is tourism. So if there is a certain coordination between Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities and Central Bank, I'm not sure, but there are many instruments and tools that investors, which most of them, 92% of them are private sector, could use using green bonds or green activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We have a question, some questions from the students on the Q&A.
Of course.
Okay, so some students are asking how they can find the places and locations where they can get training and be eligible to work in the 10 new jobs that have been mentioned in your presentations that was raised due to the pandemic. That was one of the questions. Another question is coming that, do you think that fresh graduates could really talk freely about their political views? And also another question is that, and it's expected question, that how an economist or students of economics and political science can find a fit job in the tourism sector?
I would start with the last question. How can a student or a graduate student can find job in tourism sector, especially he's graduated from economics and political science? As I mentioned here, that the new 10 jobs which will dominate the tourism sector and will be big and creative for the next decade would be the economist, the statistician, accountant. We cannot think about travel insurance salesperson which doesn't have a background of economy and statistics. We cannot think about a good smart technology developer without having a background of economy and marketing. We cannot have a sustainability consultant without having a good formation of economy and accounting. The same thing if we are talking about manager of revenue manager. We cannot talk about the e-tickets without having a good skills of economy, statistics, political science, and marketing. On the other hand, for the political experts and scientists, if we want to know more about the niche tourist provider or the new market, we have to have a political expert to see the geopolitical part and see how we can mitigate this on the new markets. On the other hand, I would return to the idea of fresh graduate political scientists and how they can share their political view by having the code of ethics for tourism. If I want to share my political view and to say what I feel, I have to talk about with the others. There are many channels that you can talk. Now I'm not always saying that I'm not working in the government, but there are many parties now that they are open their gates and their doors for newcomers just to express their way of thinking. Finally, how can we find an eligible place for training for tourism? Actually, there are two arms related to or responsible of training in tourism. One is the training sector in tourism and antiquity ministry. The second is the ETF, Egyptian Tourism Federation, where they open. I know that most of this training, most of this training are focusing or are aiming the hospitality and tourism sector, but I'm not sure if they would refuse any graduate, especially if they have background economics or statistics or political science. If they have this background, this would of course help them. I'm not sure if I have answered all the questions.
Thank you so much. Do they require specific skills that they need to work on beside their studies so that they can take a training on during the summer or something so that they increase their chances to join the tourism sector?
Yes, I think languages. Languages, of course, because if we want to talk with foreigners, we have to talk with other language, either any language, even new languages, especially if we are targeting the Chinese, targeting the Ukrainian, targeting new markets, which they are not the traditional source market. We have to learn new languages. We have to read well and to enjoy our civilization, just to make sure that if we can communicate with foreigners, if they can raise questions, we are able to answer. This doesn't mean that I have to learn all the history and the civilization of my country, but at least to know the minimum. When someone asks me who is what, I can answer the question.
So I have a question from also some of the students are asking about startups in tourism. So are there any chances or ideas, or the sectors is still to be managed more by the states, or there are ideas for startups in tourism?
Startup in tourism, I have met many young graduates, Some of them were from pharmacy school, some of them were from medicine school, and they have a creative idea, the creativity, the innovation. This is the way to enhance our startup creativity, innovation. In addition, that there are now new incubators. I would promote the one at Faculty of Economics and Political Science, Cairo University, which encourage all the young generation, all the students, if they have good ideas, they just promote their ideas and their creation, and they would teach them how to make it as a project, how to divert just the idea into a project.
I have my last questions. So how long do you think it's gonna take Egypt to get over the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism sector? And how do you think the tourism will still be an attractive sector for graduates, given that they have seen how a pandemic like the COVID-19 have impacted people who are working on that sectors and impacted their lives and everything? So to what extent is still that sector will be attractive given that situation? And this is my question. Thank you.
Okay. I would tell you that Egypt could recap the tourism very quickly. Why? Because two things. First of all, thanks God, alhamdulillah, that the number of patients and the number of infected persons from COVID in Egypt, comparing to the other world, to the whole world, is too small. This is a first thing. Despite that many people say that the published figures are not real, but we are out, the restaurants are open, the hotels are there, so it is open for tourism. So when the other countries, the other people who are coming, when they are not restricted, because there are travel restrictions in their country, when it is open, they would find that Egypt is back to business easily and quickly. So this is for the first question. So if we are considering the scenario that the first scenario from the UNWTO, that starting from June, business would recap about at least 20% from better than 2020, I think Egypt will join this as long as there is no travel restriction from the other country, because countries like UK, like France, like Spain, like Italy, which are, we call it the main source market, the initial source market to Egypt, they have closed their airports and they have restricted their people to travel wherever, not only to Egypt. So when this is open, they would come. And the first sign is that many of the Eastern European countries, Ukraine and Lithuania and all this, they have the ability to come to Egypt and they start. So this is the first thing. Second thing is that the connectivity, what I mentioned, the connectivity would continue and return as usual. So we would have from many sources market, many planes and many flights daily. This is the second. The other part of the question was, just remind me, it was when we returned, how the student could think about working in tourism while they have seen this pandemic and how it has affected the sector. It has affected the sector, but meanwhile, all the people are very anxious and ready to start business whenever the airports are open. So the appetite of doing business didn't go. So it is an optimistic sector. It is a nice sector because you will make your travel while it is open. Imagine that you are locked in a place. What would happen when they give you the chance to go? You will travel. So it is a continuous and a dynamic sector. It would never stop, it will never end, because it is related to the psychology of the person. You want to go out. You felt that you were in prison when they locked you and told you. Whenever they say it is open, everybody's happy. Everybody wants to smile, wants to see the other. Seeing people, this is a kind of tourism. You had another question? It was
no.
Okay.
Yes, that's all. Thank you so much, Dr. Adla. I'm giving the floor back now to Dr. Hala.
Dr. Adla, I'm gonna take your words. Yes, we want to see you. It's the same. So next time, inshallah, we wish to have a physical webinar where we're very happy to welcome you on our campus. And it has been a pleasure. On behalf of SOEP, I would like to thank you. It has really been a pleasure and very inspiring seminar. And next time, as I said, we wish to see you physically. I just want to sum up with a very short message for the youth or for our students. And I guess I'm gonna pick from what you said, that they have to be ready, because everything has an end. And as you said, the pandemic will end sooner or later. So why would we just sit and wait? I think they should develop themselves. They should prepare themselves so that whenever it ends, they can go immediately to the market. I think they can focus on the languages. As you mentioned, the Chinese is one of the Korean, something that is towards the Asian market. Technological skills with all the package and all the details of the technology. And finally, entrepreneur skills, because the startup is actually what is that you are creative, you are innovative, and you have the skill of the entrepreneur that we were taught long ago. So this is the message to our students. And again, I would like to thank you. It has been really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you being with you. Thank you to inviting me at NGU. I'm very glad, despite it's not physically, it is virtually, but at least I see you. And as I told you, I wish that I would come, and for the next time I will be with you all. I would insist on what Dr. Hala said: languages, technological skills. Not because we know to put some messages on WhatsApp, Twitter, but we have also to learn more, and then to enhance our entrepreneurship skills. And we have many places, as I mentioned, to enhance this skill. Thank you very much, and hope to see you next time in Cairo University at CIFRS. Thank you.